This is a story as old as time, good versus evil. Unlike the stories that your parents told you before bedtime though, this doesn't have a happy ending. The plucky hero did not come out on top, evil has been named the victor, and so too goes the spoils of war. Some people believe this story began with a silly video game review, an inconsequential video about a game called Elden Ring. No, this goes back much further than that, so to tell you the whole story, we need to go to the start. 1974, a day like most others in Shizuoka, Japan, a family welcomed their newly born child to the world and named him Hidetaka. Growing up in what he would later describe as a tremendously poor family of two office-working parents with multiple children to take care of, times were tough, and for this reason, he didn't get many books or manga to read, instead relying on what he could borrow from the library. Due to this, he would spend more time reading books in English, which he didn't understand very well, or literature well beyond his level of young comprehension. As this was his reality, he instead learned to use his mind to fill in the blanks, creating worlds and scenarios from what little information he could glean from the words or concepts that he understood. Hidetaka Miyazaki was a strange child by Japanese standards. He had no goals in life, he didn't know what it is he wanted to do yet, even as a teen. His parents restricted him from playing video games, so instead he played game books and tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons, further making use of his imaginative, creative mind. After reaching the age to make decisions that would severely impact his future choices, he decided to pursue a social science degree at Keio University until he later got a job as an account manager for the US-based Oracle Corporation so that he could pay for his sister's college tuition fees. Being old enough now to do things his parents had previously prevented, he got into video games. A friend of his recommended he play the 2001 game titled Ico, which ignited a desire he previously didn't know he possessed, a desire for video games. He decided then he wanted to become a game designer. Unfortunately for Hidetaka Miyazaki, he was now a 29-year-old man and no one would hire him. He had no relevant experience, but that didn't stop him. He kept trying, and eventually he found a studio called From Software that looked beyond these issues and hired him as a planner for a game called Armored Core: Last Raven in 2004. The project was already midway through development, but he couldn't be happier to get involved. Within a couple of years, he was directing the creation of sequels to Armored Core. Shortly after the success of these games, seeking a new challenge, as he always did, Hidetaka heard about a project being developed by another From Software team which was going very badly, a fantasy action role-playing game. He offered to help, thinking at the time that he could change the game into anything he wanted and no one would really care. Since it was already considered a failure, this was his playground, his chance to really make a name for himself and put that creative mind to use. His request was granted and he changed almost everything about the game, which later became known as Demon Souls, releasing originally in 2009 in the domestic Japanese market without very much success at all. The game, though, slowly gained popularity and eventually was picked up by publishers and shipped globally to a cult-like success. Following this, he began working on the spiritual successor called Dark Souls, which released in 2011. This game was so successful that he was promoted to president of From Software in 2014, a feat that is still to this day considered unprecedented, to change careers and become company president within 10 years. From there, the rest is, as they say, history. Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and now to present day, Elden Ring. Each game getting more and more fanfare, being more and more successful each step of the way. The Souls series went from a cult-like following as a domestic release in Japan to a mainstream success globally. With each step of the journey, the Souls games were meeting heavy criticism for a handful of reasons that haven't changed very much. These criticisms are usually that the games are too hard and should feature an easy mode toggle, and that the fanbase is toxic. It's these two things that led us to this dark day. Mainstream game press and content creators alike are found frothing at the mouth with each new release, complaining that they are entitled to have every game conform to their own standards, expectations, and preferences. That games they do not like or cannot handle should not exist, and if they can't play it, then nobody else should either. In the end, we come to this. We all have to blame Hidetaka Miyazaki's parents for fucking one night in 1973. They are to blame for everything that comes next. If it wasn't for the fact that that man is an absolute genius, a literal savant, a creator of games that are so amazing he has literally broken some people's brains, none of this would have happened. And so with the backstory laid out for you, naked as the day it was born, this brings us to the beginning of the end. A YouTuber by the name of QuantumTV took the heavy burden upon his shoulders and released the single best review of Elden Ring you will ever see. That is, of course, until he deleted it. He spoke nothing but the truth, for he is the #1 brand in honesty. He said words that the toxic From Software fanbase were just unable to hear. Maybe they just weren't ready yet. The graphics are bad, the gameplay is bad, you should feel bad if you like this game. Games that are not for everyone are games that should not exist. He was simply speaking too much truth and needed to be stopped before people who enjoyed the game heard this critique and came to their senses, for they were truly blinded by the illusion of something called preference. I hope sarcasm translates on the internet, please. Please let sarcasm translate. At this stage, a small content creator from the United Kingdom called Mischief made a commentary-style video in which he criticised the criticism of QuantumTV. He, of course, didn't take too kindly to this and began to threaten the 17-year-old Mischief with content strikes, which could result in the loss of his budding career as a content creator. QuantumTV got a lot of very unhappy people in his comment section. He decided the only way he could stop these people being angry in his comment section and flooding his videos with negative comments due to his review was to double down and make another video, and that is exactly what he did. He claimed anyone who liked Elden Ring should do themselves just enough physical harm so that they would exit this mortal realm, and that is where things started to get a little bit weird. Enter today's hero, the Actman. Actman made a video collating the various truth seers and truth tellers of Elden Ring, titling his masterwork simply The Worst Elden Ring Hot Takes. This video, as you could have guessed, featured none other than the #1 brand in honesty himself, QuantumTV. Again, he moved with swift justice to the copyright claim form and struck the video. YouTube, however, decided that this claim was lacking in merit and said, no, not this day, truth speaker. We are not ready for your truth yet. Following this, multiple content creators, including Mischief, made it their mission to uncover the secrets of QuantumTV, who mostly makes videos about televisions. In their search, they discovered a lot of very unpleasant tweets that discussed homosexuality and what he wanted to do and happen to homosexuals. I won't repeat what was said, but the screenshots are on screen right now, and they speak for themselves. QuantumTV claims these posts were all made by a hacker who gained access to every single one of his social media profiles except for YouTube, something I can't disprove, but I do think sounds a little bit far-fetched. People also found evidence that his previous YouTube channel was banned in 2018 for, you would have guessed it, hate speech, which he claims also never happened. Though the titles and topics of videos he made back then you can see are very relevant to his current opinions, such as his belief anyone who follows certain other TV or tech YouTubers want to have anal sex with their dad after doing copious amounts of cocaine and performing rituals to summon Satan. But who are we to disagree, for he is the #1 brand in honesty. After this, things got really heated. Videos were made back and forth. Quantum called other creators names, implying that they had an affinity for sexual misconduct with minors with zero evidence. People made videos exposing more of his antics. Other people reacted to these videos. But then, after everyone thought it was over, QuantumTV reached into his back pocket and he pulled out the ultimate trump card. I'm talking, this is Exodia times 10. Much like an episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Though, people were holding their breath, waiting for the antagonist to reveal the powers it held. But nobody at all could believe that such a power existed. As he yelled the words, the crowd fell silent.
The unstoppable.
I call your mother. Yes, the ultimate card was in play. He found Actman's real name and went to task finding his relatives before settling on his mother to call. If he couldn't beat Actman at the YouTube game, he would swap targets to those who were not involved at all, giving himself the ultimate advantage. Surprise. The Actman was of course stunned by this move, as was the world. There was no counter. How do you one-up the calling of your mother by an adult man on the internet? He did the only thing he could. He put together another video in which he detailed the craziness of this absolute power Chad move, stating that he would not rest until YouTube stepped in and rid the platform of the most powerful brand of honesty it had ever seen. Much like Gandalf said before he left the defenders of Helm's Deep, so too did Actman say, "Look to my coming on the first light of the 5th day. At dawn, look to the east." And so we waited. We waited and we looked. Days passed by and the anticipation was almost too much, until we saw the light crest the hill. Children were pointing, confused by the sight. Adult men were crying at the splendor. It was the Actman returned to save us all. But as he traversed the rocky path of Twitter, the look on his face sent shivers down my spine. He looked defeated. You could hear a pin drop. The atmosphere could be cut with a butter knife before he spoke. "Friends, I'm sorry. I've failed you. And that was all we needed to hear. It was over. YouTube had taken in all the evidence that he was able to gather, and after a thorough investigation, had deemed QuantumTV to be innocent. After breaking that solemn news on Twitter, which as a platform will never be the same, the Axeman went back to the drawing board. Not content to let this stand, he constructed another video to outline exactly which rules were broken and how. There was just one problem though. He foolishly used images of QuantumTV's face with a cucumber Photoshop near the mouth. A rookie error. Nobody could have seen this one coming, because that is terribly, terribly awful sexual content. And YouTube recognized this and they deleted the video, and the powerful message that went along with it would go silent, fading into the darkness. At this stage, the Axeman did something the history books will likely call foolish, though many of us who were there that day would characterize it as brave, whether by frustration or in an attempt to use alternate means like comedy to communicate the injustice and ridiculousness that had been witnessed. He took to Twitter, a bad idea in and of itself, but he made satirical tweets about actions QuantumTV had verifiably performed, which were explicitly against the terms of service, but pretending he would do them instead. Because YouTube had seen these actions and deemed they were okay, they weren't against terms of service. And though to everybody who viewed them, the posts were clearly satire, the people at YouTube didn't take too kindly to those kinds of jokes, and thus, the Axeman's YouTube channel was demonetized. 7 years of work building a large following, making creative videos, brought to ruin overnight over some satirical posts. Many content creators took to the internet to lament in the ruin of what was once a thriving YouTube channel. Others could be seen shedding silent tears for the precedent this would set going forward. Me, well, I can't say the tears were silent, but I chose to make this video and chronicle the history of this battle. In the future, some may say this drama started with an Elden Ring review that just simply told too much truth. Me, I say it started in 1974 with the birth of Hidetaka Miyazaki, and every action up until this point was destiny.